This is the Week in Sustainability from Workiva Carbon, formerly Sustain Life. It's where our team of experts and practitioners share weekly insights and commentary to keep you up to date about all things sustainability.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another week in sustainability. COP29 is wrapping up in Azerbaijan, and it's been a busy 2 weeks. While there's been no real update, unfortunately, so far on the International Climate Adaptation Fund that many developed countries are eagerly anticipating, COP has still been full of big announcements, setbacks, controversy. Let's break it down. Hannah, what stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, which was that countries were instructed to basically go back to the drawing board and return to COP with more ambitious reduction targets. There was a recognition of a really solid gap between what countries said they were going to do and what scientists said needs to happen. And this was taken seriously by a number of countries. And so some examples, the UN has committed to a very bold 81% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2035 as compared to 1990 levels. This move has been hailed as a success, but we don't have a ton of details yet on exactly how they plan to accomplish this. So far the details of their plan we know rely on expansion of jobs in the renewable energy sector and also partnering with farmers to implement and adopt low carbon strategies. All of that's wonderful, doesn't totally explain how they'll get to 81% reduction. So we'll just have to see. Indonesia also plans to start implementing provincial level reductions or reduction strategies starting this next year, starting in 2025. And they are aiming to hit net zero by 2060, maybe sooner, hopefully sooner. And their commitments also have drawn questions in the same way that the UK's have. But by the sheer fact that they've adjusted their target, it reflects positively on business interests. But the majority of the criticisms or questions coming out around their commitments are similar criticisms that we've heard before. There's a little bit of an over-reliance or overestimation on the role that nature-based carbon sinks have to play here. But it still speaks positively that governments are seeing action like this as a non-negotiable. Of course, demand is being driven by employees and investors and consumers. But the larger bracket of just people understanding that this is a smart decision and there will be huge consequences if we don't. The preparation for the physical risk of climate change is simply, it's good business strategy, it's good future planning. And growing, adding to the list of countries that up their climate ambitions, we've got Brazil and the UAE. So Brazil increased their target to around 59 to 67% emissions by 2035, and the UAE pledged a 47% cut in the same year. But of course, a more ambitious goal is a good thing. Still, none of these commitments are 1.5 degree aligned. So, especially looking at the plans coming out of Brazil and the UAE, they've put forth a more ambitious goal. Awesome. They still have plans in the works for expansion of oil and gas. And I don't want to call them out like they're unique in that way. The United States has a huge question mark about it. COP29 happened in the shadow of Trump's reelection. And, his promises to sort of continue drilling in the United States and expand drilling in the United States, of course, bring up concerns here. And there were actually sort of a shocking number of leaders. So the Exxon CEO, Darren Woods, and the president of Brazil both called upon Trump to say, please don't exit the Paris Agreement like you did in your first term. And so all of these different countries, we still have the question of, the ambitions are amazing. Let's see how they get there. But a lot of shocks coming out of COP. So what about you? What's stood out to you?
Yeah, it's great to see, some of that accountability with countries calling each other out. It was also interesting to, with this COP29 being billed as the finance COP, as we talked about a few weeks ago, it's great that on its very first day, 200 or so countries agreed on standards for a global carbon market. So governed by UN rules, these rules fall under Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement for those who care, with Article 6 generally setting rules for how countries can collaborate with each other towards their NDCs. For context, Article 6 is pretty new. It was approved COP26 in 2021 when the Paris Agreement was last updated. The UN Climate Change Executive Secretary, Simon Steele, said that this decision is the result of really a decade's worth of effort. So that's pretty cool to see this start to come together. The World Bank estimates that such a system as this can slash the cost of implementing NDCs by over half, or saving as much as maybe $250 billion in the year 2030. It's worth noting, of course, that not everything is as fleshed out as it needs to be. Article 6.2 of the framework, which would allow different actors like countries, private sector companies, to exchange emissions reductions and removals through bilateral agreements, still has yet to be agreed upon. So it's going to be really interesting to follow this in the months ahead. Interestingly, on the side, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also just launched its first carbon trading exchange. Its inaugural auction was 8 days ago on November 12th, with 2.5 million carbon credits being transacted from projects certified by names we've heard before: Vera, Gold Standard, Puro.Earth. These projects are focused in the global south, including Brazil, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Pakistan, a handful of other countries. And while, of course, as you and I have talked about before, offsets come with their share of skepticism from climate experts, it's great to see the partnership here with globally leading verification bodies. So providing some of that legitimacy to the initiative as a whole. Speaking of skepticism and legitimacy, though, what are your thoughts on some of the controversy surrounding COP29?
So, of course, it wouldn't be COP without criticism or controversy. It wouldn't be a sustainability conversation without disagreement. But something that's the most concerning to me was that the COP29 chief executive, who is also Azerbaijan's deputy energy minister, was found to be facilitating fossil fuel deals in exchange for event sponsorship. This isn't the first instance of such a thing happening around the COP. Similar deals were brokered in previous host nations. It's just increasingly concerning as global temperatures are beating their own record year over year. And in the same way that countries were called upon to raise their own emissions through their NDCs, the organizing body of the summit itself has also been called upon to return to the summit's core objectives, seeing business deals that directly conflict with the objective of the summit itself, seeing the quantity of lobbyists overshadow delegations of vulnerable countries. It's clear that the original goals are getting dismissed, they're getting diluted under business interests. There was this really brilliant letter written by former UN Secretary General, former President of Ireland, and the former UN climate chief that called out all of these internal contradictions. And they suggested a number of reforms. We can't get into all of them right now, but really principle in their suggested reform was a serious insistence that the countries that host COP summits really need to demonstrate a higher level of ambition towards the Paris Agreement themselves before even qualifying to be host, which I find the most interesting because of just how logical it seems.
Yeah, agreed.
But despite the criticism of the directions that COPs have taken, these are still the rooms that you need to be in. Change is going to be slow. This is global negotiation. You have to be in these rooms in order to get anywhere near where we need to go. So the decisions made at COP29 are going to continue to play out in the global market, and we will cover those implications here. But thank you, Sean, for joining, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Living in Sustainability.
Workiva Carbon provides organizations with an easy-to-use solution to manage the full life cycle of measuring, managing, and reporting carbon emissions. Now integrated into the same platform used to manage the world's most trusted financial and non-financial reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show on our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. See you next week.